it'll make the sale way easier, and they also look at you in a better light, right? These are a clean set of books. They should have a higher valuation.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
It is going really well, Lindsay. It's a Friday, sun is shining. We had some, guests today at the house. It was amazing, and we're getting ready to head out to the beach for a happy hour after we get done podcasting. So life is good as I know it. How about you? How's your day going?
Life is good. Life is good. We're getting ready to head up to Ohio and hang out with some family and some agents and stuff up there. So I cannot complain.
Well, make sure you tell everybody in Ohio I said hello. I have not made it back to Ohio as much as I would like to, but I think I'm going to do it this fall. I think I'm going to spend about a week in Ohio, which is going to be crazy. I haven't been there in forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moving south is a good thing, right?
Definitely a good thing, but I miss the roots back in Ohio sometimes. I won't lie. I get to go back and
Yeah.
visit more than you, though, so I'm spoiled in that way.
Very true. Well, I'm also very excited. We get to have a good friend of mine. He lives in a beautiful part of the country in California. We have the honor of having Aaron Stocks of PFS Global and AgencyPoint on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Aaron, I think we've done a little bit of podcasting together, but for the people who don't know who you are, give them a background. What is the Aaron Stocks story?
Yeah, I'll just tell you who I am. My story's kind of long, but I'm not sure if we'll want to get into it on this podcast. But yeah, I'm Aaron Stocks. I'm the CEO of PFS Global. We launched Agency Point to help independent insurance agencies with their finances. That could be bookkeeping, tax, payroll. It could be legal, etc. So yeah, super excited to be on and to talk with your audience. And it's a little bit of story about me.
So tell me, Aaron, we know what we're going to do for on this Friday for happy hour, but what are you going to do in California? I know you're 3 hours behind, but what's it going to look like on a Friday afternoon for you?
Yeah, I mean it's still the morning here, so I haven't thought about it too much. But this Friday is actually just gonna be quiet. I have a wife. Her name's Nikki, and so we're just gonna be hanging out. Usually we don't really like to go out on Fridays. It's a little busy, so we'll probably grab some to go food and hang out with our dogs at home and watch some TV and just relax. I have some work to do tomorrow, so I won't be enjoying too much tonight. But it's be hanging out, nice quiet night.
That sounds amazing. I had the pleasure of meeting your wife, and I'm with her. Like a nice quiet night at home is does not sound bad at all. That's amazing.
It's my favorite.
Well,
Every
Aaron,
every year they ask like, "Hey, what do you want to do for your birthday?" And there's all these like great ideas. I'm like, "Can we just kind of stay home, you know?" And that's my birthday usually. So
I'm with you, man. I am way over. I mean, I live in a place where it gets really congested during the summer, and fighting crowds is not my idea of fun. So, yeah, Nikki and you have it figured out. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that my clients talk about all the time. It's actually one of the number one things that I needed a resource for, which is why you and I get to do so much work together. Which, for anyone who has engaged with us, we ask you for a lot of financial data. And as a byproduct of that, a lot of agencies say, hey, listen, the person that's doing my financial work may or may not be serving me well, and or I might be doing it myself, and it's not something that I am particularly well versed in. So outsourcing accounting is something that many times can make a huge impact inside an agency. But I'd like to talk about, what does that really entail? What does that look like? If there's an agency that's thinking about outsourcing it, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what to expect as you're thinking about doing that.
sure, I think the best way to for people to understand what to expect is to go through the process together, right? And so, people will reach out to us in a number of ways. It might be an intro from you, Carrie, or, they reach out on our website or they call us because they hear us on a podcast, right? When they hear us, we always like to hop on a initial video call with them and talk about their agency, get to know them, their goals, and where they're currently at. And it's usually we spend 30 minutes to an hour with the agency owner, the principals of the agency, and talk about that. And it really lets us learn their size. Every independent agent's a little bit different, right? Although the basics are the same. And so after we get to know them, then we really can identify what they need from us. That could be just bookkeeping every month. That could be tax returns. That could be payroll, right? So after we decide what is needed and not needed to accomplish their goals, we'll then make a request for information, right? And obviously, this is sensitive information, right? You're giving your information to a third party that you haven't met except for a 30-minute Zoom. So your trust is appreciated. After we get a request for information, like for bookkeeping, for example, that'll be QuickBooks, right? So we do a pretty deep dive into your QuickBooks file and see where you guys are currently at, what you're doing right and wrong. Tax returns, same thing. What is your current tax preparer doing? Are they taking these deductions, or having the return prepared the right way, or is there cleanup issues that need to be had? So we spend a lot of time. We go through all of that information, and then we come back on what we call a proposal Zoom, where we give you notes and feedback of everything that we found should be corrected. Right? That could be, hey, you're not reconciling your trust account very well, or your agency bill is all over the place and not reconciled. The premium payables is just growing out of control, whatever it might be. We'll then go through all that. Sometimes we'll have the various people from our departments on the Zoom too, if it's complicated issues. Like a lot of times, our tax team is on to explain the issues, and so we'll go through that. We'll give you a price of what it takes to clean it up. So hey, we got to do X, Y, Z to clean it up. It'll take this long. Usually it's somewhere between 15 to 30 days. We can clean up most books and taxes, but sometimes it can take longer depending on the mess that is currently there. And then the tax returns a lot of times can be corrected the next year when we actually do the taxes, but sometimes amendments are required or suggested, and we'd offer that to you. And again, that's about a 15 to 30-day process. And so after that, we would then send you engagement letters and the proposal. If you like the proposal, you'll sign the engagement letters and you'll get onboarded, of which we can talk more about that. Carrie, I'm sure you have questions in between here. And we'll start our relationship together. So that's kind of the basics of getting onboarded, very detailed nuts and bolts of accounting.
There's so much like variability in independent insurance agencies. They're all the way from humongous ones, small town ones, everything in between. What does the ideal client look like for you guys?
Yeah, we have a wide variety of independent agents, and we love them all. Our target is 750,000 of revenue or above. However, we have agencies that are smaller than that are looking to grow to that number, and then we have agencies that are 100 plus million that are consolidators. The accounting looks very different between those two sizes, and so us having the experience of what does an agency need at their size is important, right? We don't want to implement gap accounting standards to a agency that's 500,000 of revenue, but we don't want to have cash basis accounting for a client that is 20 million of revenue. So using our discretion and knowing when to deploy the various accounting methods is important.
If you're an agency owner and you're thinking about selling your agency or thinking about growing by acquisition, you need to know what Cake is all about. Cake is an online marketplace designed to help buyers and sellers strategically find each other. One of the worst things you can do if you're selling one of your most valuable assets is to only talk to one buyer. Cake allows you to anonymously list a book of business or a slice or your entire agency for sale. Vet those opportunities and make sure that you've created demand for your agency and therefore the highest possible price. If you're looking to grow by acquisition, it's hard to find opportunities. Cake simplifies that process for you. I highly recommend to many of my clients that are thinking about dipping their toe into buying or selling an agency to check out Cake. So tell me about cleanup. That can vary widely, but what does the cleanup actually mean, Aaron? Is that your team going into the QuickBooks and actually doing journal entries, or is it you advising the agent on like where's the handoff? Because I think sometimes it's hard to envision something you've done on your own. How do I integrate someone else into my process and make it seamless? I would love to just really dive into what that looks like.
Yeah, that's a great question. So cleanup can really vary, right? You could be in different agency management systems. You could be in QuickBooks. It could be taxes or bookkeeping that needs to clean up. So to dive into a little bit of detail, like I said before, we review your books and taxes. So if you go to a service provider right now that's doing bookkeeping and taxes, and they provide you a proposal without reviewing what you currently have, that doesn't make sense to me, and I would probably not engage that person, right? Only because they don't know what they're getting into. I mean, how do they know what needs to be cleaned up or not? They're just providing a proposal and not providing good feedback or service, in my opinion. So after we do that in-depth analysis. We take notes on everything that we said need to be cleaned up, and we give you those notes at no cost. So you could take that to your current account and get them fixed if you'd like, but usually you'll engage us to fix them since we found them. So we'll go through those notes, and in the cleanup process, let's go through after you sign the engagement letter, you get onboarded to a team. Let's talk about a bookkeeping team. So you'll have a video call with the team that you're assigned to and the supervisor you're assigned to, and they will actually go through everything that they found because that's who actually reviewed the books is that supervisor. So they'll go through with you. They'll go through with you what they found in the books and what needs to be cleaned up. We typically take the approach here that there's a lot of sunk costs into going back multiple years. Sometimes it's important, like with our friend Chris Paradiso, to go back multiple years, and he wanted that, and that's fine. But most of the time, we say, hey, it's a sunk cost in that let's not go back 2 years. Let's correct things going forward. We understand there was problems previously, but you know, it's not worth going back in the cost for you. So we'll pick a cutoff date. We'll say, hey, you've already filed your taxes for 2023, so we're going to start cleaning up the books on January 1, 2024. So there will be some journal entries that need to be made on 12/31/2023 in that case, and then we would start correctly on January 1, 2024. So whatever the cutoff period, the day before that is when you make those journal entries, right? And that will correct it. Now, how you reconcile with that with tax, though, right? Because usually the books have to match the tax returns. Okay. And if I'm getting too detailed, Carrie and Lindsay,
No,
let me
this is
know.
perfect.
Okay.
This is perfect.
So if so, let's say that your books match your taxes, which they should, and that's something we review. And now we're saying your books are wrong. Well, now your tax return is wrong. But again, we don't want to go back and amend all these years unless there's something very material, right? And so when we make that journal entry to fix the books, we also have to make a corresponding entry to say, hey, this what was wrong in the prior tax return, and it has to be reflected now on the books, or else your books don't match your taxes anymore. So you have to carefully make the journal entry in that you also are telling the tax preparer, whether that's us or someone else, here's what was wrong on the books the year before, and so you need to make a correction entry on the books the next year, right? So that journal entry is more complicated than just okay, debit this, credit that, right? All right. So after we make the entry, we're gonna now have the kickoff call with you, right? We went over everything that needs to be cleaned up. Most of it is on our end, but sometimes we do need to say you've made these mistakes in the past in your AMS, right? So you made these mistakes in Hawksoft, you need to change how you're operating Hawksoft going forward. That's part of the cleanup process, right? So that might be that hey, your mapping is messed up, or you're not making receipts in general, or something like that, right? So we'll go through and explain to the client what they are responsible to do. And usually the cutoff is everything in the agency management system is on the client. So that'll be making receipts, whether that's the account managers or producers, etc, and then we will take the information and everything in QuickBooks is on us, right? Now, sometimes there is overlap with the agency bill and the direct bill commissions, right? A lot of times we'll reconcile the direct bill commissions, which is in the AMS, and not a lot of times, but on occasion we will also handle the agency bill, which will be in the AMS as well, right? And so we have to work that out up front in our proposal, who's going to be doing those two tasks to decide who's going to do them. But other than that, once it gets into QuickBooks, that's on us. So we're cleaning up the QuickBooks file, or if you're in Epic or something, we're cleaning up the GL side of the AMS, and you have the AMS side on your end, right? And then we go through and clean up each thing.
So let me just ask you something that's probably crazy, but I'm just going to ask it because I think that it's on people's minds. And I get asked it when I do evaluation or I'm a fractional CFO. How exactly are we transferring data back and forth? Like, what is the data share? What am I running reports and sending them to you? Like, what is the tactical amount of time that if I outsource, how much time and energy as an agency owner or the person that was had this responsibility, how much time savings can I expect, and what will my body of work look like?
Yeah, so there's for accounting specifically, there's going to be some amount of transition, which is getting us as many logins as possible. Because not only do you, as an agency owner, not want to have to every month send us information like a bank statement, we don't want to wait for you to send us a bank statement too. It really delays us getting financials out. So on our end, we collect logins. So we want your bank login, your credit card login. We need an AMS login. We need your carrier logins if we're doing the direct bill commission reconciliations, right? And so we want all those logins for you that we store in our secure system so we can go in and get the information ourselves. That will save you time from having to send us everything and also saves us time from waiting on you to send it. So the share process outside of that is actually pretty basic, right? Because now we have your logins. We're already reconciling your, you know, commissions. We are doing the trust accounting using your AMS and QuickBooks, so we don't need you to send us anything at that point. But we may have questions. Hey, what was this transaction for? So we'll send you a list of questions via email that you'd respond to. So on the bookkeeping end, there's very little file share back and forth. We're not collecting receipts from you every month or something. We're going right to the source, which is the bank statements, AMS, carriers.
Yeah, which makes it so much easier. Like, absolutely not duplicating work, but also not waiting on each other in order to make sure that you have what you need in order to make that happen. So, obviously, I've been focused a ton on accounting because that is the thing. I need financial statements in order to do my job. But PFS does more than that. And actually, my clients engage Agency Point to do several different things. The next most common thing is I'm going to buy an agency or I'm going to sell an agency, and I need to know the tax implications, or I need an agreement in order to make that happen. Talk to me about how, if your accounting is outsourced, how seamless that might be in order to get to the next two steps in that process. Give me an idea how that works together inside your organization.
Yeah, good. That's a good question. Actually, I have a little bit of a case study on it that came up. So people will come to PFS, will provide a proposal. And so I had one the other day where the cost was exactly the same that they were paying, right? And they had a reasonable set of books. There wasn't too much cleanup that needed to be done, but it was just a bookkeeper, a single person, and they don't have the other resources that we have. So I said, hey, you're probably fine where you're at. We're the same cost, so there's going to be some transition. There is some cleanup that needs to be done, but you could probably give our notes over to your bookkeeper. They can clean these things up. But are you thinking about having any life change? Are you going to buy an agency, sell an agency? Are you going to grow a lot? If so, let's make the change now because we can help you with the tax and legal standpoint, right? So they're like, yeah, hey, we might exit in a few years, so that makes sense to me. So what I was telling them was, we have agents buy and sell all the time. So on top of having the books, you know, they'll let us know, hey, we're thinking about selling. So we have the books. We send that over to the tax accountants here. We'll get an estimate of what is uh, the sale price, right, and what's going to be retained. Then the tax people will come back with, okay, this is what the estimated net will be. They'll run it by the attorneys to see if there's anything that can be done. If it's a quicker sale, there's not a lot you can do. Like, we always suggest moving out of a high tax state or there's other things you can do to reduce your tax, but if it's going to be a quick sale, there's not much we can do. Um, so the tax people will run it by the legal team. Legal team will draft the documents for your purchase agreement or help you negotiate the purchase price or other terms in it, right? Because when you're selling, it's not just negotiating the price. That is one large component of it, but there's non-competes. There's going to be reps and warranties that have to be made, and so those are all negotiated terms, right? And so legal team helps with that. So having the accounting done, the taxes done, and the legal team all being able to work on one transaction it is something that's underappreciated because when you have three different parties, an accountant, the CPA, and the legal team who are three different companies, the first thing they'll do is fight with each other about how they want a deal to go, right? And it's very annoying. We deal with it because maybe we're only doing the accounting and the taxes, and they bring in another attorney, and we're like, all right, the attorney has to flex on us for 30 minutes of the call, and then we all are on the same page. So we've already been over that phase. We've worked together for many years, so we just try to get a deal done that's correct for the client. And that's kind of how that works.
Well, there's something that you said though, even though it's all the same cost, we've had a couple of these that I think is important to highlight as well. So, oftentimes inside an agency, it's the agency owner's wife, or someone inside the family that gets the job of doing accounting. And it's a trust thing. It's about who do I want to have the line of sight on the financials, on compensation, on bonuses, on whatever it is. That is very, very common. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen that it's someone else, but it's one person. That's typically the least likely role that has duplication of training between one person and another, which means, from my perspective, that's an area of huge risk because if that one person is no longer with your agency or gets sick, disabled, whatever, and is not able to come to work, it can impact the core operations of your organization. Um, that to me in and of itself, unless you have a handbook and you've got great processes and procedures that are documented, we actually note it in evaluation that you have to have depth of talent in these critical roles, or it could really hurt the ongoing operation of your agency. That is another thing to think about. So even if it's the same cost, it's not the same stress and risk if you only have one person that's qualified to do that job.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, and you're absolutely correct. So once agencies get larger, they do realize their need for redundancy, right? And that's when they'll typically outsource their accounting for that reason specifically. Like if they have an in-house person or a firm that is just maybe a one or two person shop, then they will look to find a larger firm or a firm in general. In the smaller agencies, I get it. They're just trying to survive. The wife's doing the books, whatever. I get it. But it isn't, you know, and it's easy for me to say, but the cost isn't that bad, and it really creates redundancy for you. So if your wife has to have a baby, or a family member is doing it and is on vacation that week, like it's where you should focus some investment. It is into your accounting, and the reason why I say that for the smaller agencies as well, and larger ones, but when you go to sell your agency, if PFS is doing your books, that's going to make a lot of sense to a buyer when they go to review them. It's going to be industry standard. There's not going to be, oh, this and that, I do this or that. It's going to make a lot of sense to them, and it'll make the sale way easier. And they also look at you in a better light, right? These are a clean set of books. They should have a higher valuation. So when Carrie's valuing, an agency, looking at the quality of the financials is going to be crucial. And so I would encourage even smaller agencies to outsource their accounting to professionals as well.
Yeah. You know, I think we've given it a couple examples of when it works, but I think that some of the best learning is when outsourcing or making this kind of jump doesn't work. I said if someone wants to do this, one of the best ways to learn how to do it is to where did it go wrong for others, right? So, what are some of the common ways that this doesn't go as smoothly as it sounds like? We do the video call, we do the cleanup, we have a proposal that sounds very, very clean and easy. Well, we all live in the real world and know that not everything is always clean and easy. What are some common reasons that things go off the rails?
Yeah, so a few come to mind. One is if they're using some proprietary software that they've built. It is very hard to integrate accounting into it because we know most of the agency management systems out there, but when you have a random one that you've created, it's very hard to integrate accounting into it. The next will be if the owner likes to be very very hands on with everything, right? And I was guilty of this in my first few years of business as well. I like to micromanage everything. I like to know everything that happened. I want to read every email. And there comes a point, obviously, in everyone's career where you have to delegate, right? And it's very hard to do, especially for me because I'm a micromanager. I'm sure my staff would have worse words than that, but I like to say micromanager. And so if you are, if the agency principal really likes to be hands on, like touch every transaction in QuickBooks, you know, uh, wants to do half of it themselves to save a few $100s, and so things like that. So when the agency is very micromanaging of the accounting firm, it makes it very very difficult for us to have a successful relationship. And we do try to ask that up front, just so we're all on the same page and we don't have a false start engagement, which does happen. But usually we can avoid those landmines by having the conversation up front about who's going to do what and this is our domain and that's your domain. Obviously, we want feedback from the agency principal, but we don't want to have over micromanagement, and so that usually creates a bad engagement.
What are some things that you think are really, really important? Obviously, my mom knows a lot about this. I do not. So, what are some things that are really important that you deem important that we haven't asked you about?
Whew. That's good. Wow, that's a good question. Probably, we focus a lot of emphasis on the accounting side, the bookkeeping, and I think maybe we don't shed enough light on the tax implications, right?
Yeah.
And so to agencies, independent agencies out there, if your books are wrong, your taxes are wrong. That's the bottom line, right? And so obviously you need your accounting done right to have your taxes done right. So that's just step one. And that is pretty common where books are messed up and the taxes are wrong, right? And that could cost money. Maybe it saves money 1 year, but then it costs money in an audit, right? So the next thing to that is, although your books are right, doesn't mean your taxes are right, and they might be maybe accurately prepared where there's not a mistake on the return, but tax planning wasn't implemented, right? And so when we take on a client, our notes are not just what's wrong on your return. It's you need to implement these 5 steps to save money. So a good case study on this was we had a client who inherited the business from a parent, but the parent was still left on as an owner, and they didn't want to. The parent didn't want any money from the company. Okay, and they were an S corporation, so a little technical here. So the other two that were still in the children that were still in the business could only take salaries because they couldn't take distributions from the S corporation because then the parent would have to receive money. So they just kept increasing their salaries as their profits increased to get more money out, right? And so, if for those of you that don't know, paying yourself a high salary is the worst for taxation. Although you have to pay a reasonable salary according to IRS standards, just constantly increasing it to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 is one of the worst mistakes that can be made. So the tax planning there was actually more complicated. We said, well, why doesn't your mom give up her ownership either for a payout, a loan, or gift it? Let you two take the ownership because that's the plan anyway, right? And then you guys can start taking distributions, which would massively not only save you on payroll taxes like Social Security and Medicare, you could enable yourself for the pass-through into the elective tax, which would save you a lot of money. You would have a larger qualified business income deduction, which insurance agencies take advantage of. So that is a very common thing that people overlook. They just kind of focus on their accounting, and a lot of people just give us their accounting, and then they'll be like, "I only want to focus on the accounting. I got this guy down the street doing my taxes." We're like, "Well, let us take a look at your taxes. It's free." Then we come back and we're like, dude, you'd save 20,000 a year. This isn't some like Instagram, commercial where it's like, we're gonna buy this real estate, we're gonna do a cost seg. We're not like that, and you're not gonna pay zero tax. But if you just pay yourselves correctly and do, a few tax planning techniques, you could save 20, 30, and we always have people that save more than that. But it is something that's overlooked a lot.
So I think what you're saying is the connectivity of understanding the industry and understanding your business allows you to provide insights that they might not already get from someone doing it internally or someone down the street that does the accounting for a plumber, a contractor, an insurance agency, and many other different clients. What's funny about the last example that you gave is as you're describing it, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, raise your salary up, 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 and up, and then you want to sell. And now all of a sudden you're way outside what the industry standard is for compensation. Therefore, if you can't step back from that compensation, your buyer is going to discount what they're going to offer you if they have to maintain that kind of salary. So there's a lot of insights that you can get about how these things work together and give you as many opportunities as possible. But without that insight, you can't make strong business decisions. You just can't. And you don't know that this decision ripples and impacts both your tax, your valuation, your marketability in the industry. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that it might actually change the fact that you might be able to hire because you've already allocated these resources a different way, and you might choose to 5 years before you transition to reallocate it, invest in a producer that drives growth. So my point is there's a lot of power in having people who look at your kind of business and be able to give you insights in order to maximize that business and give you as many options as possible. I mean, it's kind of the beauty of us working together in many ways, Aaron. So I love that you gave one that, tax is a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing year to year. It's definitely a tricky thing if you're buying and selling a book of business, and it's definitely a tricky thing if you're transitioning from one generation to the other. They all have different characteristics to them, no question about it. So, in closing, if someone's thinking of uh, outsourcing accounting or tax or payroll or all of it, their 401k, how should they think about getting started?
Yeah, I think if they're, thinking about it heavily, I think we would, be hopefully someone's first choice in the industry. So you can reach out to us. You can go to myagencypoint.com, submit a contact form. You can call us at 909-294-7372 or email us at info@pfsonline.com. We just like to have conversations with agency owners, so it's no pressure. If we're not a good fit, we're going to tell you right away, or if there's a better solution, we'll tell you right away. We don't charge for any consultations. It's just a matter of getting to know you and seeing if we're a good fit. So don't feel like you have to buy something from us.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Aaron. I think this is a super important conversation and a really great resource for any agencies who are looking to learn or improve in this area. So really appreciate you coming and joining us and sharing some insights.
Thanks for having me
Yeah,
on. Hopefully
Aaron.
it wasn't too bad.
No, of course, Aaron. So I hope you guys have a great Friday, and look forward to talking to you in the future about all kinds of stuff, I'm sure.
Likewise.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.